You're listening to the Co-Creator Network. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Why Shamanism Now, a practical path to authenticity, with your host, Christina Pratt, Director of the Last Mask Center for Shamanic Healing. She's talking about how shamanic skills can bring us to physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being, especially when nothing else can. Now, here's your host, Christina Pratt.
Welcome, everyone, to Why Shamanism Now. We're back for part 2 with Evelyn Rysdyk. Thank you, Evelyn, for joining us again.
Oh, it's a delight.
And we're going to continue in our adventure here talking about Evelyn's new book with Bhola Banstola about the Nepalese Shamanic Path. And when we last met, we were talking about carrying a mantle of power, which we got into as we talked about these different aspects of initiation in Nepal. And I wanted to bring that topic up because I know that the issue of am I initiated or not, the issue of initiation itself in the West is a very fraught topic. And one of the ways someone might iron that out or begin to explore that from themselves would be to engage with this book, The Nepalese Shamanic Path, and engage with these initiatory helping spirits in this particular path and to see what comes in your own. So I have this beautiful love affair with Nepalese shamanism and have engaged with these energies, but they're not central in my cosmology. And so I just wanted to be clear with people. What I'm inviting you to do is to buy the book and to do the practices in it. Do what this beautiful, clear laying out of how you could engage in this cosmology and these energies as Bhola experienced quite spontaneously and in this very, very traditional spontaneous experience of Nepalese initiation into sort of the wild shaman version of shamanism in Nepal. But my point is, I'm inviting you all who are uncertain. Am I initiated? Am I not? How do I begin to engage in this work? How do I carry my mantle of power with greater conscious awareness? Is buy the book and do it. Work through these experiences and practices and journeys and ceremonies and rituals in this book and see how that informs your own practice. I'm not saying go play Nepalese shaman. I'm saying go use the wisdom of these people. And as Evelyn said in part 1, this is an unbroken shamanic tradition. And so this is for those of us that come from profoundly broken not only shamanic lines, but cultures, reaching out to peoples who live these unbroken traditions, not to harvest and appropriate their work, but to engage in it and see how it informs us on our own work. And so this is my kind of where I wanted to go with that initiation conversation that was started in part 1 is if you're uncertain, stop stepping over that like it's a speed bump in your shamanic practice and dive in deeper. And this is one way you could do that. I don't know. Would you share anything about that, Evelyn?
Well, 2 things. One is it's really important to say that we're not playing Nepalese shaman. And I'm certainly not doing that. In writing this book, it was really important for me to, again, build a bridge between Bhola's culture and his 27th continuous generation's worth of shamanic experience with Westerners in a way that they could begin to get a sense of the richness of that practice and also how incredible he is as a teacher. I use the gifts that I have to basically uplift the gifts that he carries. Secondly, I think you're absolutely right. By exploring how to a very small degree, because this is, in the breadth that is possible in Nepalese shamanism, which is vast. The little slice of which that I am able to provide in a book, it will help you to begin to, in trying those rituals, in exploring some of the journeys that are in there, to get a sense of where you are in your relationship with the spirits. Where are you in your relationship to nature? What is the most important thing in your life? Because I think we need to look at that very concretely. We have to look at what is the most important thing. I have this treasured time in the morning when I'm in that muzzy place of not quite awake. I'm not a leap out of bed person. I know some of you out there are. I am not one of those. I enjoy that liminal state between sleep and being awake. And in that state, I do my gratitude practice. I speak with my power animal, and also allow whatever inspiration the spirits want to share with me when I'm just conscious enough to be able to remember it. It's different from when I go intentionally on a journey, but that's one of my ways to start my day with the beings that are invisible but have a tremendous impact in my life. I do the same at the end of the day, where I allow that time to, again, repeat all my gratitude for what I experienced, set the stage for the being grateful. I always end with, and thank you for the miracles that I experience tomorrow. I honor that in the morning. Thank you for the experiences, the miracles I experienced today before my day begins. And I also thank for the experiences I had that day, and then set the stage into sleep with thank you for the miracles I will experience tomorrow. That puts me in that context of, bookends of my life now in the middle of the daily stuff that has to get done, has been set into this context of me communing with the spirits whom I love and I know love me. So that's my personal takeaway in some ways. That and having a whole bunch of more elaborate ways to say thank you to the spirits in the ceremonies that I've learned from Bhola. That is a way to approach any other culture's work, I think. It has to be that you dive into it, not to replicate it in your life, but to find how is it that way of being expressed by this particular teacher or that particular teacher, this particular culture or that particular culture, can move me closer to how it would be best for me to be in the world. How is it that I can be a truly authentic human being, first of all? How can I be in right relationship with the beings around me, seen and unseen, human and non-human? How can I remember that I am tiny, and yet I am part of this miraculous expanse of the cosmos, no more or less important than any other? Providing those kind of, it's like growing up I was fortunate to grow up in a family with a lot of elders. When you grow up as the only kid in a context of elders, it's very different than growing up in a family with lots of kids and peers. There is this, my experience was to have this context that was an experienced, wise context, a way to look at the world that was different than in my child's body, my child's experience. And I think it's important when we look at shamanic traditions from other places, spend time with other teachers, that we allow it to be that larger context that can inform us and shape us, continually shape us, because I don't think we're ever cooked. We think of initiation, go back to the initiation idea. Initiation is this one-time event, and you survive it, and woohoo, I slid into home and I'm all set. Initiation I think of it as an ongoing process, because you are having to reshape your perceptions, reshape your understanding of the world and yourself continually if you are really engaged with the spirits. You are unwinding all the ordinary reality perceptions, and most of them are limitations, about who you are and the nature of the world around you. So there may be a pivotal event that sets you on the road, but the road itself is a continual initiation. It's a continual shift to perception. It's a continual path of growth where, you'll hear very, very powerful shamans say they really don't know anything. All they know is how to keep their feet on the path and keep negotiating and being in relationship with that which is in front of them and around them.
Well, and this is really the title of your book, right? I mean, the Nepalese Shamanic Path, Practices for Negotiating with the Spirit World. I mean, this is what you're offering to people, is exactly that. These are ways we can up our game here. We can actually learn what we might need to be doing.
And to think about everything in your life, is like you're not ever going to be done. If you're done, you're dead.
Right.
The universe does not deal with stasis very well.
Right.
You have to be in a constant place of what comes next, how do I deal with it, and oftentimes the what comes next is unexpected, flies in from left field, and how we work with it is our spiritual path.
Yes.
That is our spiritual path, how we work with the life that we have, reminding ourselves that it is one aspect. The life that we can experience with our senses is, of course, where the rubber meets the road, because we're in a physical body. But it is this larger context that is around us that can support us, that can guide us, that can course correct us, and in fact maybe throwing us that curveball from left field to reorient us.
So,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead and finish.
No, I can do a monologue. So jump in.
Okay. So what I was going to say, as you were saying this, I was thinking, that the person, the body, is one main tool for a shamanic practitioner. However, I was thinking, for you as a maker of sacred tools, as someone who creates with her hands and makes objects in the world, that Nepalese shamanism must have been like a kid in a candy store for you. Because
they got lots of stuff.
They got a lot of tools, yeah. And so I was wondering if you could just give listeners just this kind of overall sense of these sacred tools and ritual objects, because they're this, as you were just saying, it's like these other physical manifestations through which energy is being focused or something. But so just kind of a general overview. What do you feel is really characteristic or most essential about these tools and sacred objects?
Well, every shaman would have either a large toolkit or a small toolkit that they work with primarily. They, more often than not, would have a drum. Their drum is a die grow, which is sort of shaped like a lollipop. It's a two-sided drum on a long handle, and the handle is shaped like a purba, the tri-foil knife. It's a triangular-shaped blade. Knife that is used in Nepalese and also in Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism particularly. So it would be the drum and the beater. It would be a source of light on the altar. That's really important. There's lots of parallels. And they have objects that refer to something for water, something that refers to the animals that they work with or the birds that they work with. They might have their mala, which is how they count their mantras. The drum is one of those things that reminds them, as they are working with that drum, it has a female side and a male side. It has a handle, because the purba has in its design, shows the upper world, middle world, and lower world. So it also typically has a head that shows the teacher. So you are in your tool being constantly reminded of these energies that are helping you to do your work. There are unusual objects, like there's a shalagram, which is a fossil. There's a river that these tumbled stones can often be split, and they have an ammonite fossil in them, the spiral-shaped fossil. And so that can remind you of several things, and in the Hindu tradition, they, depending on what that curve of the shell reveals, sometimes it's a piece of it or what have you, it reminds them of all the different deities, each particular formation reminding them of a different deity. But it also reminds you of the nature of life. Life's not a straight line. Life is this constant spiral into becoming. You start this little baby, and it continues to evolve and change and grow. And you grow as a shamanic practitioner as well. So, and I hope nobody else can hear the beeping that's coming in through my headset. The other things on the altar remind you about working in a good way with the water, working in a good way with the air, working in a good way with the different spirits you work with. So you might have a representation of the Nagas, the spirits of the water, the guardians of the water, and also part of the pillar of life, that divine pillar that holds, near the bottom anyway, of the great divine pillar. You may have on there an image of Garuda. Garuda is a being who is often shown with the lower part of his torso ending in the shape of a purva blade. That being, who is part eagle and part human being, and also shown oftentimes represented with a purva instead of legs, the purva blade as legs, is the one that can help to keep the Nagas in balance. Because if there's too much action from the Nagas, or the Nagas are out of balance in one way, you might have drought, or you might have flood. Neither one of them is conducive to life. So it's important that the Nagas be kept in harmony, and Garuda is one of the ones that can do that. So you're in the altar, and the altar can be incredibly complex. And oftentimes when Bhola teaches, the altar is somewhere around 3 feet square. All of these elements are a constant reminder of all that you need to negotiate with, all that you need to be in harmony with. So there may be crystals, there may be all these different things that represent something that is an important part of the process. So the purva, which is an incredible tool that's used very, very extensively by Nepalese shaman, it is used for clearing. So the blade can be used for extraction, it can be used for clearing a room, it can be used to clear a house, create a kind of sacred space with it. And it can also be used in terms of retrieving energies. It can be used for blessing. So it's sort of the Swiss Army knife of the Nepalese shamanic tradition, in that it has a lot of different possible uses. So that's a primary tool. They're innumerable, and they always include things from the natural world, and they always tend to include a mala. The shaman's garb in Bhola's outfit is actually quite heavy, because he has a lightweight skirt, it looks like. He calls them his dresses, a top with long sleeves. They're both white cotton. He has a turban, which is one long strip of red cloth tied around his head, and also a long strip of white cloth tied around his head. On top of that is a headdress, which is, in his case, is a wide red band, and into that are tucked peacock feathers, and also long porcupine quills. So you've got the birds, and you've got the animals. You've got that sense of this divine light that the peacocks have. They're a blessing creature. in Nepalese shamanism. And on top of that, they wear bandoliers of very heavy bells, as well as their malas. So crisscrossed across their chest might be one or two bands of bells, usually one across the shoulder and down to one side. And they can wear well, they could be about 20, 30 pounds, depending on how heavy or how old the bells are. Then cross the other way, in terms of Bhola, he crosses heavy malas of soapnut and rudrashka beads. Then he has his own personal mala around his neck and a melong, I can't remember the Nepalese word for it. It's a shaman's mirror. You can tell I'm sitting here with my eyes closed and I'm not looking at my book, to help reflect away anything that's unbeneficial. And before he engages in his work, he has to put all those clothes on. He then has to empower them each time with songs, with mantras, with dancing. And then he goes to work. So it's this whole ritual of reminding himself, even though he doesn't need reminding, but it's like reminding every cell in his body that he is going from his ordinary state to his going to business. This is his going to work clothes as a shaman, going to put on his going to work clothes. He then has to do the song of awakening the costume, awakening the bells, awakening the malas, awakening the drum again, and saying, okay, now we're ready to work. And now I am stepping back into relationship with these beings, honoring them, because I know I can't do anything on my own unless I'm engaged in relationship with all of these spirits. Nothing is possible. So even though the tools are different, and you may not have a costume, and you may not have all the bells and whistles, that idea that you need reminders, there's a reason why Eastern Orthodox people, for instance, have icons. They help us to see the divine, remind us, yes, I honor this spirit, I honor this saint, I honor who this is. A shaman's altar are concrete reminders that are also inspirited so they can be used as healing tools. The altar provides us those constant reminders of that invisible world. We need that to kind of antidote the fact that we don't see it with our ordinary senses.
So, Evie, what do you think happens to a contemporary practitioner's practice, someone who's actually engaged in healing, so a shamanic healer, when they don't really have an active awakened altar or structure that their practice is held within?
Well, I would have to say that unless you have some way to engage the spirits and remind yourself that the spirits are, we have a saying in our healing practice when people are, all set to say how fabulous and wonderful you are, and we go, it's the spirits. The spirits make us look good.
Mm-hmm.
That reminder that we may be the arms and legs and eyes and ears of spirit here in the human world, but we can't do our work without the spirits. In fact, we can't take in breath without the spirits. We can't eat or drink without the spirits. That larger sense of this intangible something that makes life possible, that flows through life and allows for continuance, that is incredibly strong and also fragile in the fact that it's so interconnected that anything that's a part of it can be imbalanced enough to throw the whole machine out of kilter. When we put ourselves in that place, it's an incredibly humbling experience to recognize, I have some personal wisdom, but in the larger scope of things, I don't know how to make, you think about it, a plant. I don't know how to take sunlight and water and turn it into sugar. I can't do that. I do not have that capacity. That's every weed in the yard knows how to do that. but I don't have that capacity. And that place of humbleness, I don't mean like fake humbleness, but that you're gobsmacked by how miraculous the life is that you live because of this intangible energy that takes innumerable forms that allows life to be. And when you're in that place, you naturally, and I mean really being in that place, not giving it lip service or just thinking about it intellectually, but letting yourself feel that to the point where you weep with the miracle of the fact that you're sitting here drawing breath, that's when you step into doing the work.
Well, and I'm thinking about this relative to people who are shocked when you say to them, your altar is not a place to just put pretty things. It's not a place to just put, crystals you've purchased, beautiful items you may have purchased that other people made, and maybe beautiful items you've made, but it's not a display. An altar is, as you're talking about, if we've humbled ourselves to each item on the altar to understand why it's there, why is this bowl of water there? Why is this shell there? Why are they there, and what are we asking to be in relationship with, and how are we asking to be in relationship with it? It becomes a whole different reason for existence. It isn't there just to put pretty things that make me hope Spirit might show up.
Right. It's in some ways it becomes a kind of mirror to see ourselves in. Yeah. When you look at an altar that's fully in spirit, and you look at the water, you can be grateful for the water in your body. And when you work with water spirits, perhaps you can be grateful for the water spirits you work with. When you see the stones on the altar, you think about how grateful you are for the fact that you have minerals in your body that allow you to stand. You have this framework of bones inside of your body. You have also minerals in every organ of your body. And so there's a way to see the stone on the altar as part of your physicality. It's part of your ability to be grounded on the planet and also represent a specific spirit that might represent on the altar. The same thing with each piece. It becomes this kind of mirror in the way that I think of as reverent participatory relationship. We have to see the sacred in ourselves and in the other being. And when you're with other beings, visible or invisible, you are constantly having to reassess where you are. Where am I in my true visceral understanding of my place in the cosmos? Where am I in my sense of why I'm here? How am I doing relationship? We all need to be attentive to that, because there's no such thing as being all done. You can't get married to someone and then, okay, I'm good. I'm good that we're married now, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. That's insane. And yet we would not necessarily think the same thing about working with the spirits. You don't meet one and go, okay, well, I've got this power animal now, and we're cool. I'm done. No,
right, and you
have to be in relationship.
And let's go back to what you said about where am I. So we have this relationship. I'm just kind of gesturing as this is me in relationship with my altar and all the energies that puts me in relationship with as this kind of mirror and helps me to ask this question, where am I? And the other thing that you express beautifully in the book is that whole thing, the human and the relationship with the altar and that world is held in a larger cosmology that gives it all context. And so why don't you talk a little bit about the Nepalese cosmology that takes us beyond this idea that the cosmology is simply this commonality of these three worlds, but a cosmology is more than that. It helps us answer the question of who am I, where did I come from, why am I here, and where am I going?
And I would add that those are questions that need to be continually asked. Those are questions because as we evolve and change in our lives, and I think, if we're really doing this right, we have to be changing all the time and evolving all the time, gaining new wisdom.
Yeah. Wouldn't you hope
like,
your answer is different now than it was when you were 20?
Absolutely. Life is a very dynamic school,
Right.
So the shaman believe that, their upper part of their body is a reflection of the upper world. Their torso is a reflection of the middle world, and from the hips down is connected to the lower world. So the cosmos is not just outside, it's inside. So when you are interacting, say, with the spirits of the lower world, you maybe go visit your power animal in the lower world, that lower world is not outside of you, it's also inside of you. So, and you wouldn't necessarily think of it as stratified because the spirit world really isn't stratified. We only create that stratification, so we have a way to interact with it. So you're doing a piece of internal experience as well as an external experience. When you go on a journey to someplace in the middle world, you are doing that and recognizing that that's happening inside of you. So when you have that reflection, when you know that what I'm doing here in the world is not just happening outside of me, what I'm doing in the world is happening inside of me. And frankly, we give a lot more attention to what's happening to us than what's happening outside of us. And when you recognize that if you're taking actions in the world, either in a journey or in ordinary reality here in middle world, you are taking those exact actions inside your body. So if you are being inattentive to balance, I'll be kind, or maybe I should just say if you're in conflict outside, you are creating also that same conflict inside your body. So not only are you disturbing the health and well-being of beings outside of you, you are disturbing the health and well-being of what is inside of you, not just in your spiritual sense, but in your physical sense. So you are constantly reminded, and that reminder makes it really easy to choose something that's going to be good for you, because we tend to be pretty self-centered. As human beings go, we kind of learn that when we're little kids. And
is there
Go ahead.
Is there anything in this Nepalese cosmology itself that really helps you to crystallize that everyday task of balance? And how do I maintain that balance? Is there anything in the Nepalese cosmology that just helps you with that way of being? That growing out of that kind of self-centeredness of the child into this sense of how do I carry this responsibility?
I think to go with where I was going, when you recognize that it is extremely personal, it involves your own health and well-being. That can shake you like nothing else. When you recognize that how you are in the world changes your own health and well-being. How you are in the world affects not just your own health and well-being, but the people that you could love, the beings, your pets, whatever it might be, the beings that you really care about. When you have that visceral understanding, based on that cosmology, based on the reflection that you see in the purba, based on the reflection that you see on your altar, based on the experience that you have when you're in ceremony where you're feeding all these beings, you recognize that there is no separation. Because remember, in the Eastern tradition, the divine is a what's so, you are part of it. So how you behave has ripples that go inside as well as outside. So in action, if I have my hands out in front of me, this is radio, it's hard, so I'll just describe it. So something I'm doing out here in front of me with my hands is I clap them together audibly for the audience. That creates sound waves that go into me and go out all around me. The same is true of anything that we think or feel or take action with in the world. So there is this, when you have your focus on the fact that this entire cosmos, this unity, this divine unity, is unshakably connected, and that everything that you think and feel and do moves all the pieces around, it causes you to, and particularly when you recognize that it impacts your own health and well-being, because, as Westerners, that's the most important thing, isn't it? You automatically proceed in a different way, and you don't proceed in a fearful way. I don't mean to say that. You proceed in a much more intentional, compassionate, clear communication. Oh gosh, clear communication is a big one. And in an honoring way, in a respectful way, because you want to feel that harmony in your own body. You want to feel that you are not impacting your loved ones negatively. You want everything that you care about to be nurtured by your presence. Nurtured by your presence, not wounded by your presence. And if it is inadvertently wounded by your presence, that you do repair so that you re-establish harmony. So in essence, you are doing then the role of the shaman within your life in ordinary reality. So am I moving through as a force of harmony and healing? Or am I causing disruption? And if I do cause disruption, because everybody gets pissed off once in a while, then my responsibility is to do repair, to bring back that harmony, because I don't want to hurt myself or anyone else around me. And everything about the practice in Nepalese shamanism continually reflects that back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In your own practice, do you practice inside a Nepalese cosmology, or do you practice inside your Norse cosmology, which is the cosmology of your ancestors, for those of you that missed that show?
I tend to practice in relationship with primarily two beings, my great-great-grandmother and my power animal. And when I need to reach a different understanding, I call on all the possible spirits that I can to help me course correct. Because the spirits, particularly the ones in these complex traditions, and Norse tradition is certainly complex in its own way. Nepalese is very complex because it is also more foreign, at least to me initially. It provides me another perspective. I'm somebody that likes to have another perspective. When I'm up against the wall, I can receive compassion and teaching from the spirits who I know best, and they speak to my heart, and they help me to get in a place where then I can receive more insight. And so it's somewhat like my creative process in a way. It's not the product, it's the process that is what's important in creativity. So for me, it's always a process. I engage with the spirits that I am closest to first, and then I spiral out as needed to the others that I've been fortunate enough to interact with. And that when I honor all the spirits that have been teachers for me, living or invisible ones, they are there to engage with. They may be there to, when I'm doing an offering to the river, I might say, and I also honor the Nagas who provide their energy to the waterways all around the world. I include them because I've been exposed to them. And it's another way, it's a sort of way to honor the river that has a face. There's something useful from the Nepalese tradition and also from the Norse that you are interacting with things that are intangible, like weather phenomenon or the spirit of water or the spirit of the earth, in a way that is more like interacting with a being that's recognizable. So it provides another kind of context for the way we are wired as human beings, as upright primates who are primarily visual and are designed to interact in relationship. It's easier to be in relationship with a being who has a face.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And to have both, so I can go down to the river, which is this wonderful sound in the spring. It's fresh water, it's full of fish, It's a little tiny river, but it's really a blessing here in the neighborhood. You can feel that as a strong local spirit. I can interact it with all the ways that I love that river, and then I can also think about the Nagas who have a face, and I can honor them and through them connect myself to the waters all around the world. Now, that's an example. But that provides another layer, not of complexity, but of richness.
So,
and that level of richness is really, for me, it allows my gratitude to become these marvelous concentric circles, they go out and out and out and out into the larger space.
Yeah. So as you watch people in class with Bhola experiencing these teachings or on retreat with Bhola, and once they get past the kind of cognitive dissonance you were talking about in part 1 of the show, what do you see engaging in this cosmology brings to people that they didn't have before?
I think the blessed celebratory nature of it, that life really is a kind of blessed celebration. It's this extraordinary journey that we get to be on in a physical body that goes as long as it can. And, we all have an expiration date. We just can't read it. So however long that journey is, it can be this remarkable, celebration. Celebrating all of it, even the things that feel tragic to us, are part of the richness of who we are. My great-great-grandmother, who is my primary teacher, she reminds us that think about life as this marvelous gathering basket. And don't sort the experiences that you've had. Put them all in the basket. They're all part of the richness of who you are. The good, the bad, the times you succeeded, the times you fell flat on your face, the times that you fell in love, the times your heart were broken. All of those are part of this richness that you put in the basket while you're alive. And she says that's what you savor when you no longer have a body. So to think about that fact that we have this capacity to take all of that richness in and interact with it and celebrate our life, celebrate the fact that we have life. And in that celebration, be grateful for it and grateful for all the beings that participate in the fact that we do have life, because we can't do that in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. We are dependent upon all those other beings.
Yeah.
And to have this wonderful, rich gathering basket of experience and not think of one of them being more important than the other. Because it's only when you cross to the other side that you'll look at it and go, that piece over there that I didn't think was very important really was pivotal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because even as we look back on our life, we see the experiences that we have and thought, oh, that was more important than I thought, that left turn I made.
Yeah. All right. So, Evelyn, let's dive back into the book here. There's a beautiful description and explanation about the reason for the dedication ceremony, and then what Bhola's dedication ceremony looks like, and lays that out. And then there's this paragraph I pondered for a while where you talk about, in essence, simplifying that ritual and how a person could begin to engage with that. Now, my sense of that is it's a beautiful example of what you're talking about writing the book in a way that it builds a bridge, because it does break down this really lush and rich dedication ceremony that is Bhola's practice at this time into doable steps a person could take, because there is this tendency for Western practitioners to be awed by the exotic, rich nature of shamanism that's held in these traditions, but then just not know what to do about it, right? And so you create this bridge. And I pondered that, though, and I wondered, what does it say about us as contemporary Western practitioners that we need that? what does it mean if, because the dedication ceremony is the beginning of actually doing the work in a sense, right? So what does it mean if we need the beginning, the actual getting started to do the work broken down for us? What is that saying to us about what we should be shooting for? what we're looking at, or how we could be inspired by this work?
Well, I'll say it in this way. Western practitioners learn techniques first and then develop relationship with the spirits. That's how we're taught. We learn a technique for journeying. We learn, if we go and learn healing practices, we learn how to do extractions and depositions and soul retrievals and what have you. And then we have to deepen relationship with spirits and learn about taking care of the spirits that are around our home and in our home. And all, it's a secondary thing. Where if we were raised in an indigenous culture that practiced shamanism, that context would come first. The learning how to be in relationship with nature, being able to feed the spirits, understanding the idea of contributing toward continuance, being in harmony with the beings around you, that would come first. And then you'd learn techniques. So we're having to turn ourselves inside out to fill in the gaps that we did not learn. We didn't learn shamanism in that context. We have to relearn the context, not the techniques. The techniques are things that flow from the context. And if you don't have the context in place, then the techniques are really not as effective. Yes, they will have some effect, certainly, but without the context, they're standing on very rickety legs. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. The context, which is our relationship with the invisible world, that context is where the tools come from. In interacting with the spirits, you see how vital harmony is. So, of course, when you then learn the tools about helping an individual have harmony inside their body, it makes sense. It's flowing from that larger context that you already understand. You understand it not intellectually, but viscerally. You have made offerings your entire life. You understand how important it is to pay attention to the rhythms of nature. You may live close to nature, that it is required that you understand when animals migrate, when plants are ripe. You need that knowledge in order to survive. That context is what's missing for Westerners. But I believe it can be put in place. And the faster we do it, frankly, the faster we attend to that context, the better it's going to be for our planet. Because our planet is experiencing our lack of connectedness with it. We've operated from this place of being autonomous, which is insane.
Yes. I was thinking about the act of making puja, mm-hmm. And I was wondering, could you share with listeners an act of making offerings that would be something they could truly get up off their beautiful butts after listening to this podcast and go do it towards that bigger idea of engaging with our life in a way that's more balanced? Let's just say with the earth itself. Is there some sort of simple act of puja they could make?
It can start with some water, or I love to do an offering with birdseed. It's the simplest thing, and man, the critters, especially in winter, love to see more birdseed on the ground. To go out with an offering, and in Nepalese tradition, it would have to be something really beautiful. So you might do flower petals, you might have incense. It might be as elaborate as you want, but that it be heartfelt. You're bringing food to the spirits. And you bring food to the spirits to not say thank you for just what's gone before, but you are thankful for the next breath that you take. You are thankful for the next beat of your heart. You are thankful for the air that you breathe. You are thankful for the water that rushes not only through your body, but falls to the sky as rain and nourishes all the plants. And you allow yourself to go as deeply into that gratitude as possible, including those beings that you are closest to. Perhaps first, giving thanks to the parents who brought you into the world, even if you don't like them. They still served a remarkable purpose, bringing you into the physical world. And all the people behind them that are your ancestors, the trees, the plants, continue to fill up with your gratitude for life until you are so full, you're just bursting. And then leave your humble offering on the ground with this idea that you are feeding your beloveds. When you put that offering on the ground, you are feeding your beloveds who love you, who make sure that you are alive, that have passed to you your body, when I'm thinking about the ancestors, who have given the elements for your body, which is nature, which provides the flow of all the elemental forces that allow you to remain living. So you're feeding your beloveds. And to do that, it's so simple. Go for a walk. If you have great long hair that I do, I leave some hair. When I have nothing else in my pockets to leave, I pull out a few hairs and leave hairs, because we've in trees falling down and branches breaking in different winters. I have found birds' nests with, it was then blonde hair. Blonde hair wound all the way around the birds' nests. I found them in mouse nests too. You leave just that gift. I'm giving some of my carbon back to the earth with my heartfelt gratitude for the beauty that is life, with its hardship, with its confusion, with its turmoil, and yet it is this extraordinarily beautiful gift that I have been given, and that I have a responsibility to give back as often as is possible for the privilege of being alive, and reminding myself of that responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. So in these last few minutes, what would you share with us what you think could be sort of the wildest vision of possibility that you and Bhola share about having worked together to create this really beautiful book of authenticity and inspiration, by spirit, to have your capacity to make things so clear, and Bhola's, what do you say, 27 generations? I mean, good Lord.
27
continuous generations, right. So what was your big vision, like your wildest dreams about what you could create by bringing this into the world?
Really to help human beings be better human beings, to recognize that they are no more or less important than any other part of creation. They have tremendous power, but they have to stop wielding it as though they were toddlers. Toddlers have a lot of power too, but they send a lot of stuff crashing to the ground, and that's kind of the way we've been operating. So to recognize that we're beings of power that have to learn how to do that, use that power in a good way, and that we are part of the divine, and we have to learn how to use our divinity in a good way. And relearning that context that is so present for Bhola in his world, that we in Western world have the capacity to put that context back in place for ourselves. And it requires us being intentional about it, humble about it, that we don't know. We focus on all the things we know, and we brandish that about like a sword, But the truth of the matter is, what we don't know is far more important, that we need to bring our focus on attending to what we don't know. And to remember that Bhola has this wonderful phrase he uses when he teaches, I'm still learning. And what a wonderful mantra for us to have. Yeah. I'm still learning.
Well, speaking of learning, would you like to take a couple minutes here and talk about your apprenticeship program?
I'd love to. This is going to be our 13th. We do them as residentials. The information is on our communal website here at spiritpassages.com under initiatory training programs. And we try to instill this same kind of understanding, as well as teaching all the usual traditional techniques that a shaman would use in the world. We really focus on the relationship people have with the spirits, with nature, and with themselves, and helping people to really integrate, because that's something that was missing, and certainly in my initial training, how to integrate all of this into life. Because when we fully integrate it and are living it, then we really reap the blessings from it. It's not just something that we've learned that we put on the shelf. We're living in this atmosphere of the blessings, and then in living in that atmosphere of being blessed, we are much more likely to extend that to others. And so that's really the focus in our work, teaching all the different methods around healing, but also giving people initiatory experiences, allowing them time to spend time in nature, enjoying. It's a retreat on a lake, so they have the water spirits, and they have the forest, and the animals that come through, and weaving all of that together, and then supporting people to be able. We teach small groups intentionally so that people have an opportunity to really be coached along on how to integrate these things into their life. Because that's where the rubber meets the road, when it's not just an idea, but it's a lifestyle.
Beautiful.
And that's really our focus.
Yeah. Thank you, Evelyn. Everybody, I want to remind you that Evelyn's book, this new book that we're talking about, is called The Nepalese Shamanic Path, Practices for Negotiating the Spirit World. And thank you for this next beautiful piece in your ever-growing list of tools, beautiful tools, or maybe even thresholds of openings that allow us to engage more deeply in our practice. So thank you, Evelyn.
Well, thank you for having me on the show again.
Yeah, thanks for coming back and giving us this time. I did also want to say, just back to the learning topic that we're on here, is Massive Illusion and the Authentic Self is happening the first week of June in 2019, and we are currently taking registrations. You can go to lastmaskcenter.org, and all the information you need there is on the homepage. And so back to Evelyn, spiritpassages.com to find the information about the classes and this apprenticeship that she's talking about. And then also evelynrysdyk.com for direct access to the books. And again, that's EVELYNRYSDYK, evelynrysdyk.com. All right, Evie, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, as always.
So we give gratitude to the ancestors that gathered around, those human and non-human, and those that reach out to us from many different cultures to help this human family figure out what the hell it's supposed to be doing right now and to do it better. I give gratitude to the earth below and the sky above and those human hearts that unite us all. So thank you, everyone, for listening. And I invite you all to take a trip, either electronically or on your little 2 feet, to your favorite bookstore and go buy yourself a new book.